With the expanded college football playoff, there is now a guaranteed slot for a group of 5 member to crash the party. And I don't know how long that's going to stay because, one, I think more often than not, and it's just a byproduct of the disparity in college football, you're going to see the 5 versus 12 game where the number 12 seed is almost universally going to be a group of 5 champion is going to be a blowout more often than not. It's just how it's going to be. But the first time that somebody from the Sun Belt or somebody from the Mountain West American Macker Conference USA beats a big dog, a blue blood, it's going to be celebrated like you would not believe, because that's what sports is all about. It's the underdog beating somebody that nobody expects you to beat. It'll happen someday. And when it does, and if it happens to, for instance, last year, we would have had a scenario where Liberty would have played probably Georgia in the college football playoff if there was a 12-team playoff. And if Liberty had somehow miraculously won that game, I don't know how much longer the group of 5 gets access to the college football playoff. But right now it exists because the power brokers can say, hey, you know what? We're giving you that slot. The 65 of you, 68 of you, whatever it is, can battle for that slot, one position for you, and we'll pay you a decent chunk of money to not complain about it. And those schools go, okay, sounds good. But that slot exists. And so I think we need to talk about who realistically can fill the slot that the college football playoff now has in its 12-team era. And so I've got 6 schools here that I think have the best and most realistic shot to make a college football playoff. And these are in, by the way, no particular order. I do think some schools have better chances than others. But I think you have to start with Liberty, who was the group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six Bowls before the playoff expanded. Liberty last year went 12-0 in the regular season, 13-0, wins the Conference USA Championship, and then gets stomped by Oregon in the bowl game, which, yeah, is going to happen. But I think, and I don't know that this is controversial. I don't know that this is even a hot take. I don't think the playoff committee spends a whole lot of time watching group of 5 football. I think they look at records like the vast majority of college football people. They look at records. They see Liberty's undefeated. Yep, they're the best group of 5 team. And I think Liberty's got a great chance to go undefeated in the regular season one more time. They have a bad schedule, a really bad schedule. They have the luxury of not having one of those Power 4 buy games where you take your check for $1.8 million, go somewhere, get your ass kicked, but you have softball this year. They don't have that at Liberty because they don't need it. They play at Appalachian State, which is legitimately the most difficult game on their schedule. But they have the personnel to be really good. Caden Salter is very, very good at quarterback. Quentin Cooley is a very good running back. The way they play offense is fun and interesting and exciting to me. And I think Liberty has a great chance to go undefeated again in 2024. Now, why they might not make the college football playoff is because they have to beat Appalachian State. They have to go 12-0, 13-0, win Conference USA to have a chance. Like you have to win your conference. It is the group of 5 conference champion. It is not it's the highest ranked group of 5 conference champion. It is not the highest ranked group of 5 team. It's not any of that stuff. So you have to win your conference, which I think Liberty can do probably somewhat easily. But if they lose to App State, if they have a 1 in the loss column, I don't think they're going to be the group of 5 representative because the schedule is so bad that I don't think they can afford a loss. So they have to beat Appalachian State. Speaking of Appalachian State, I think they're the second school for me. They have a ton of offensive playmakers. They got Joey Aguilar at quarterback. Caden Robinson is a really good wide receiver. Eli Wilson at tight end. They have playmakers offensively, and they might be better defensively. That's a nice combination. And then also Appalachian State doesn't play Texas State, which is likely to be their strongest competition for the Sun Belt crown. And you could argue probably that Texas State deserves a spot on this list. I didn't put them on my list because I think the way and the style that they play makes them so susceptible to maybe getting beat by somebody they shouldn't in a shootout, that App State plays a different style of football, that they're not as wide open as Texas State. Now, for Appalachian State, they have kind of a double-edged sword there, where they do have one of those bye games that Liberty doesn't. They go to Clemson. They can't get embarrassed by Clemson. It can't be a 73-10 game for App State to, I think, remain in that conversation for who's going to represent the group of five. If they can play Clemson to a 45-28 game, then you have something to point to. And I realize that kind of stinks of like, hey, we didn't get our asses kicked as bad as we thought we would. It is a selling point on a resume, but that's just where we are. You can't get embarrassed by Clemson. And then, just like for Liberty, they have to do they have to beat Liberty, because you're probably going to lose to Clemson, right? You then can't lose to Liberty, go undefeated in the Sun Belt and win the conference title, have 2 losses to your name, and still be because I think the American is more often than not going to get the benefit of the doubt. Like in the hierarchy, right? You have your Power 4, you have your SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. Then I think in most people's minds, there's the American kind of by itself. And then you have the Sun Belt, Mountain West, MAC Conference USA, maybe in that order, that the American is going to get the benefit of the doubt, that those are the schools that are waiting for the call up to the Power 4, that if the Big 12 expands or if the ACC needs to expand, it's going to be the Memphises, Navies, Armies, Tulanes of the world, not so much the App State, Coastal Carolinas, Texas states that are going, Buffaloes, et cetera, that are going to get that call up. So I think more often than not, the American is going to get the benefit of the doubt more than the Sun Belt will. So Appalachian State can't have 2 losses on their resume, I don't think, when their 2 losses are to Clemson and Liberty. So they have to beat Liberty. And that'll be a fun, big-time game. It will have, and this is what I talk about, this is what I mean when I talk about the college football playoff expanding. The idea is that it loses, the regular season of college football loses some cachet because not every game matters anymore. I disagree with that. I think there are more games that matter tremendously. In 2023, Appalachian State versus Liberty has no bearing whatsoever. We don't need to pay attention to it. In 2024, an expanded college football playoff where those 2 schools are, in my opinion, 2 of the 6 schools that can crash the playoff party, that game is massive. Huge playoff implications. I think it's great, and I love it, and I'll be watching because that'll be a fun one. I talked at length about the American. It's why 2 of the teams of the 6 power group of 5 schools are from the American in my eyes. I have Memphis, who's the preseason favorite to win the American, on my list. They have experience at the most important offensive positions. They have an experienced quarterback, Sean Hannigan, and they have offensive line experience coming back. That matters. The downside for Memphis is they play at Florida State, and then they play the 3 toughest teams in 2024 in the American. They play Tulane, they play South Florida, they play UTSA. So you are more likely, I think, to get tripped up in that conference schedule where you probably have to go undefeated outside of beating Florida State. At minimum, you have to have 10 wins. And when you are playing at Florida State and then you play the 3 toughest teams outside of you in your conference, it's a lot to ask to go 3-1 in that stretch, I think. Also, I think UTSA from the American is in that group for me of teams that can make the playoff. They have 2 really big playmakers in Kavorian Barnes, the running back, and then Oscar Cardenas is a tight end that is a mismatch problem. They also play Memphis at home. So if you are going to play the top dog in your conference. Get them at home is a nice consolation prize. But on the opposite of Memphis, UTSA doesn't play Tulane, doesn't play South Florida. So they got a little bit of an easier conference schedule. They also, on the flip side, they play at Texas, which is probably a loss. And then they are replacing Frank Harris, who set school records at quarterback. They haven't been playing football for all that long, but it's still school records. Frank Harris played at a high level for UTSA for a while. Can Owen McCown, Josh McCown's son, can he play at a similar level? Can he play at Frank Harris level? I don't know, but I do know that they're going to have to be good at that position. They are not good enough that we can surround you with really great talent and you can be just good. You can be average and we're going to be a college football playoff contender. They're not going to be that. Their quarterback position is going to have to play really well. And I think they are kind of the one team in this scenario where there are quarterback questions, which is not a great formula to make the college football playoff. Then my last two teams, one, I think, going back to, I don't know that the playoff committee is going to watch a ton of Group of 5 football. They're going to, one, the job is somewhat easy for them, and then they just have to rank the best Group of 5 champion. In the Mid-American Conference, Miami is the favorite to win the conference in the preseason poll. But I picked Toledo to be the MAC challenger for that Group of 5 spot. One, they have a Power 4 bye game, but it's at Mississippi State, which is not unwinnable. If you are going to draw up in your mind like somebody who has aspirations to make college football playoff from the Group of 5, you need a bye game, probably, more than likely. You need that. You pay me, I'll come to you. Mississippi State is at the top of the list of like kind of best case scenarios of this team is not a juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. Where, like, for instance, Miami, they have 3 Power 4 bye games. They're going to Northwestern. I guess it's not a bye. They have 2 bye games in a game against a Power 4 conference rival. They're going to Northwestern for a bye game. They're home for Cincinnati, who they play every year, but aren't going to play every year going forward. But Cincinnati's now in a Power 4, and then they go to Notre Dame. So when you put those together, where Toledo is like, we're playing Duquesne, UMass, and Mississippi State, and Miami is saying, we're playing at Northwestern, Cincinnati, and at Notre Dame, which one of those sounds much more daunting? So even if Miami goes undefeated in the Mid-American Conference, wins the conference, if they go 1-2 versus Northwestern, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame, they're probably out of the running to make the college football playoff. But Toledo, if you could beat Mississippi State, you got a decent chance of winning probably 9 to 10 games. They also have the three of the bottom 6 teams in the preseason MAC poll are on their schedule. Plus, well, I guess not plus. On the flip side of that, they play the number 1 team. They play Miami. They'll have the opportunity to knock Miami out of playoff contention because Miami realistically is not going to go 3-0 against Notre Dame, Cincinnati, and Northwestern. And if they do, they're probably a lock for the college football playoff, to tell you the truth. If you're going to go to South Bend and win like Cincinnati did the year they made the college football playoff, you got a great shot to be the Group of 5, because if you can win at Northwestern, at Notre Dame, you can beat Cincinnati, you can beat Toledo, there's probably a pretty good chance you're looking at 11-1, 12-0 in once you throw in the conference. But Toledo will have that opportunity to knock Miami out of playoff contention. Then you look at Toledo's schedule. They do have, I think, 4 of the top 6 teams in the MAC preseason poll. That's a downside. Like, conference games are hard to win, and I don't think we talk about that enough, where it's difficult when The other team knows you intricately. They recruited some of the same kids you did. They know your tendencies. They know what you want to do on 3rd and 1 from the 40-yard line on the left hash. And you got to do it on the road. Winning in conference is hard. And it's why I'll never, a win is a win is a win. If somebody wins a game 21-20 over a team in conference that doesn't win a game, and people will point to that later on at the college football playoff resume, look like, well, they only beat that. I don't care. They won. A win is a win is a win is a win. It is hard to win in conference. But when you have 3 of the top 4 or 5 ranked teams in a conference on your schedule, it makes that path a little bit more difficult. And finally, and I think probably most people's overwhelming pick to make the college football playoff from the group of 5 is Boise State. They returned 16 starters from a team that won the Mountain West last year. Ashton Genty, their running back, is a workhorse. Averaged 150 yards a game last year. If he stays healthy, they got a great shot. Ahmed Hassani, they have a defensive end who might be the best defensive lineman in the group of 5. I think he had 9 straight games with a sack last year. That's unbelievable production and also consistent production, which is important. Now, the downsides for Boise State are it's the first full season as a head coach for Spencer Danielson. And they have some tough road trips where they play at Oregon, who's a preseason top 5 team. Probably not chalking that one up as a win for the Broncos. But so they go to Oregon, they go to Georgia Southern, Hawaii, UNLV, San Jose State, and Wyoming. So those are some long trips, and then some places like you're going to Las Vegas. You might not want to take a group of college kids, but if you can get them, lined up and focused, eyes on the prize, whatever words you got to use. I think Boise State I would say Boise State and Liberty to me are the two it is your spot to lose. In Boise State, I think with a loss to Oregon, gets a free pass more than Liberty does. Liberty loses a game, I don't think they got a chance because the schedule is that bad. Boise State can afford a loss to Oregon and maybe even a second loss and still be that team. But it's the 14th straight year that they are picked in the preseason poll to win a Mountain West, which is impressive. And I think if I had to put money on it right now, I would pick Boise State. But I don't know that Liberty goes anything other than 12-1 or 13-0. But those are your two teams. If you're asking me who you're looking at to be seed number 12 in the first 12-team college football playoff, what do you think? Did I miss somebody? Am I pegging somebody incorrect? Did I miss a conference that deserves a second team to be in that conversation? Is it Texas State? I don't know. You tell me in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, get all the college football content we're pumping out. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. It helps us get in front of more college football fans, and more college football fans is always a good thing. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.